Welcome back to the C bracket game where we have Sebastian versus Sam. Alright, let's jump into it. We've got Sam with the white pieces, Sebastian with the black. Get famous queen's pawn to start the game. And black might be preparing to challenge the center here. And white takes the opportunity here to take more control of the center. These pawns are trying to control all these center squares. And this works, I guess, because this knight is still defending the d4 pawn. So you can afford to push it. Black possibly planning to counter on the other side of the board. And we do see that. Okay, we got takes, and looks like the first pawn has fallen. The problem here is white has two attackers and there's only one defender of this pawn. So after capture, take, we are left with a scenario where white has won a pawn. Black tries to chase the knight out of the way, but white defends it. Black sees the opportunity to pin the piece and potentially win it. White now needs to find, I think, a4 here, adding a defense to the piece. Misses the idea and loses the piece to Sebastian. Queen moves, keeping an eye on the rook and knight. Can't capture either of them right now, but you might be able to if you can get this move in. The knight defends that, so maybe first you push this knight away, then the knight moves, then you push the d5, you push the pawn to d5, and then when the second knight moves away, you win the rook. This knight voluntarily kind of moves off to the side, so that abandons the defense of this square. Now white can accomplish their plan of pushing this square, and that might have been the whole point of this, was just to distract the knight. Unfortunately, I think white missed the idea, attacks the knight, and it goes back and now covers the d5 square again, so you can't immediately push that. You're going to have to find a new way to distract it, maybe bringing the bishop in to capture it. We have some pawn moves, and white probably needs to figure out how to castle queenside now. Black needs to figure out where this bishop is going to live and get it out of the way so we can castle kingside, which is the only side that's not disrupted at this point. Maybe playing into the center. White can't immediately play this because the knight still defends it. White comes in and attacks the rook. Rook's going to have to move. And we've a bishop developed, and maybe some ideas of castling queenside here. Oh, but white misses that the pawn is only defended once and attacked twice here. So black's able to capture that. Now with some eyes to looking at a forking square, the queen has to stay defending it. Queen moves. Maybe keeping an eye on this square. There's some potential knight moves that don't work right now, but that would eye this important square on the enemy camp. So always good to just notice those things. Black develops a pawn. White can capture, but black seems fine with this. It kind of opens the queen up a bit. Black attacks the knight, trying to force it back out of the way. Notice if you just retreat the piece somewhere, the bishop behind it drops. it comes with check, and you're probably going to drop the rook as well. So that knight can't move. Maybe a move like bringing the bishop back would be a better choice. Just removing that tactic. White or black attacks the bishop, but it had eyes to trade off anyway. And I think black really needed to recapture the piece here, not go on the counter attack. We see again the counter attacks if they're flawed in any way, and this way the piece can be captured by the knight. At the end of the day, black still hasn't recaptured this piece, and is going to drop another one. Not to mention that the bishop could just go back and capture and get out of trouble in the process. So this way actually works out well. Okay, so Sebastian was ahead here, and then ended up losing 2 pieces for the one. So now the game is almost even. Sebastian's up one pawn. Bishop can't take here because it would leave the defense of the rook. So rook first moves, attacks the queen, tries to push it away from the defense of the knight, but misses that the knight can capture the rook, and the pawn is pinned now. If the pawn moves, the bishop falls. So the queen goes first to guard the bishop, and then the pawn drops. Now there's 2 attackers on the bishop, and you have to find an idea. I mean, maybe developing this pawn and having the bishop eye up both pieces here is decent, but I think the problem is that the queen can just capture this bishop, and if you recapture the queen, the knight attacks, takes the queen and moves out of danger, and the bishop ends up getting nobody. So you're kind of stuck here. Now, this bishop can't move out of the way and guard the queen, so the queen's undefended in the back here. Black's got some problems. Doesn't have time to save the bishop. Does go with the idea of attacking the piece, but then white blunders attacking or taking the bishop with the wrong piece. Needed to take with the queen. This hangs this queen with check on the king. Now is going to drop both pieces, and that might win the game for Sebastian. White finds another pin, but this is it. This is a check on the back rank. The king is weak. The only move is to block with the rook, and then you just take it, and that is checkmate. So first game goes to Sebastian. Okay, round 2. We've got looks like knight's taking the center of the board. I mean, knights develop before bishop is typically a good plan. I guess the problem with this is that there's no pressure keeping the pawn from moving. So the pawn moves and now kicks out the knight. Maybe the knight can go here and come back to attack the pawn. Looks like we missed that idea. The problem here is this pawn's the only piece defending the knight, and the knight's attacked twice by both the queen and the opponent's knight here. Sam can capture this piece right away and win a pawn, but it looks like he missed that opportunity. Sebastian comes in, pins the knight, so that you can't win the piece anymore. But you can attack it, and now you have to decide, do you back up or go forward? If you go back, black can cut your defense off, your pin, and you have to drop back to the other diagonal. If you take it, black does lose the opportunity to capture the knight, so maybe taking is a better option. We don't see that, and then we see a sacrifice here. The sacrifice is interesting. Um, Black should have recaptured here, and after the bishop takes back, it keeps the pin on the piece. Um, we see Sam instead counterattacking, which might not be the best idea. Sebastian can just block the piece and attack it at the same time, and now the bishop needs to move again, and the knight's going to move away, being able to win a pawn for nothing. So now probably knight moves back. Okay, we got an attack somewhere else, so missed the opportunity to save the knight. We get captures, maybe really committed to this pin. Bishop coming here, breaking the pin. But now maybe I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the answer is here. I guess you don't have much. With this move, Black can capture the knight on the next move, winning the pawn. So you do have to do something. Probably just capturing the bishop is the best idea. Taking the bishop for the knight. Okay, we'll take a moment to attack the this bishop, and Black counterattacks, attacking the other bishop. Now, I think this loses because Black can move out of the way, capturing a piece, forcing a recapture, and then win the bishop. So again, a lot of counterattacks that don't really work here. Instead, we get a capture immediately, which just trades pieces. So missed opportunity there. Pawn runs down the board, but it doesn't have a lot of support. So Black's going to be able to recapture this pawn pretty easily. And should probably focus on it, because given enough time, White will get some pieces over there. This knight is still at risk of capture. White brings another piece, forcing Black into the corner where it eyes up the passed pawn. White defends it. Black castles. You always got to ask what changes in the position when you castle, because it's can be a pretty dramatic move, especially when a knight is within a single hop of your king in so many directions here. Don't see any specific problems with it. So looks like Black was safe there. We do get to throw in a check, which is always fun. King moves, and hopefully there's some purpose to this check, not taking the knight, but moving to a diagonal where you support pushing the pawn another space is a good idea. Moving to attack the rook doesn't work because the knight can just capture it. You would take back with the pawn, and wait a second, maybe it does work. Takes, and let's look at that variation. If takes, all these squares are defended. The rook's actually trapped and has nowhere to go, and Black loses the rook. So in this move, Black can't capture the bishop, and that's a problem because Black's still trapped. So this bishop move is quite good, and we do see this trapping of the rook. Yeah, brilliant play, well done. Wins the rook for the bishop. On this side of the board, I don't really like opening this before the king has had a chance to castle. King's going to be a little bit exposed now. This pawn falls because it's attacked by both the queen and the rook. Queen can't recapture it. I like this move, trying to distract either the king or the queen or the knight. If one of them moves, you actually have tactics here. Let's look at one of those examples. And say knight moves, knight captures bishop, queen captures knight, and the rook falls. If you try to recapture with the queen, you have a similar problem. You can actually just capture the rook immediately. And so black must have noticed that and just moved the queen, making sure to keep defense of this rook and leaving the option to capture back the bishop with the knight. Bishop falls anyway. Queen doesn't fall for it. We've got the recapture with the knight. And we have another pawn push, both defending this pawn and maybe trying to distract the queen again. We've got a rook developing to an important square, important file, targeting a square that the king might be a little bit weak on. If you can get the queen to that file, you can get an attack going. And we've got knight g3. And with that, Sebastian runs out of time, only has 10 seconds left on the clock and runs it down, trying to think about where to move this piece and keep it out of trouble. You want to keep guarding your h4 pawn, but you don't want to get walk into another tactic. And that ties up our game, so we have to go to a tiebreaker game, 3 minutes each. Okay, and so this is going to go fast. Each side developing quickly. Black now probably wants to try and take control of this diagonal. This pawn was hanging for a move, but that was rectified. White takes control of the center and now forces the knight to move. Knight moves to an unprotected square and drops right away. So you can see, in these fast games, anything goes. White spots that the rook is undefended. The bishop never made it to the diagonal and grabs the rook right away. That's going to be a really strong piece, really strong win. Knight falls right away as well, not defended now. And black's going to have a hard time holding on to this game. Bishop develops to a square that can be captured, but the pressure is already on, and Sebastian doesn't see that he can just capture the piece. Knight comes in, looking for the coup de grace, finishing the game with a beautiful checkmate. And I think maybe black missed it. Needed to play queen e7, guarding against the checkmate. White misses it as well, castling. Then we have, well, this wasn't an undefended piece. The bishop was guarding it. So queen takes, bishop takes queen, diffusing the mate, but losing too much material. We've got a bunch of pawn moves, and now this is probably going to be a slow death because unless white hangs a queen, it's going to be hard to come back. Guarding the pawn, activating the rook, capture, capture. Unfortunately, this sequence opens up the rook to see the king, and this is going to be checkmate. Black kind of walked into checkmate here, capturing this piece and opening up the file. The king can't move to the side because of the bishop. The rook covers straight on an attack, and the only piece that can block is the bishop, but it's pinned by the queen. You can't put yourself into check, so that's it. And Sam wins the match. All right, so let's jump over to here. And we got Sam with 2. Sam moving on.